everyone. Thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. So it's also a pleasure to come after the wonderful presentation by Alfonso. You were flying high. We're going to land lower. So that's what we do. That's what we are, who we are. So I'm going to quickly through it. So let's say we design through several different scales, from small scale to, let's say, to bigger building, to small infiltrate interventions. This is just to introduce what we do and when, let's say, how we enjoy our work. So yeah, today, let's say it's a pleasure to be here for the New Together. We are showing this, which is a project we just completed for a no-profit organization. We were quite involved in it. It's something that started 6 years ago, so it's quite a long time, and we were following everything since the beginning. So in a kind of very uncommon, I would say, way to produce a project right today in Italy. So due to the fact that the non-profit organization, let's say, works in a field which is different, so works in social, somehow we were somehow involved in any side of this idea, from the fundraising to the final realization. So where we are in Milano, in Quartiere Adriano, which is quite a peripheral part. So I would say, we could say, how can I express it? Let's say these are some of the pictures of the area on the northeast of the city, with some kind of historical heritage, with different, let's say, values. Let's say a deep participation feeling of the people living in the sites, but also some kind of high or strong dynamics of, I would say, exclusion or inclusion, or exclusion rather than inclusion, which are going on. So when we got to the site, this was what we had there, which was a former, let's say, a leftover of the agricultural past of the city, which some abandoned part from the municipality, some kind of, let's say, leftover of different plans of urbanization from the 80s, 90s till today. So this was a kind of leftover left there. Let's say, from a former agricultural past in a city that has changed around. And so here you see it. So what we really liked about this place were the traces, but also the fact that, let's say, the no-profit is a no-profit that works on, let's say, mental fragility. So one of the families, this is the family that built the house at the beginning of the last century, and one of the, let's say, the nephew of one of these people is one of the, let's say, one of the people carrying on the no-profit organization. So which will host in the frame of a law which is called the Dopo di Noi law in the Italian, let's say, legislative framework, is hosting elderly people with, let's say, children with children. They're kind of grown up, so they're 45, 50 years old, but let's say elderly people with sons and with mental fragilities or with mental disabilities. So the overall proposal that we, since the beginning, we were working on was meant to keep somehow the traces of what was there before. So keeping this little building which was existing, which is called Casa Colonica, which is some kind of left of the agricultural use that was in the place, with a lot of, let's say, with a strong willing of creating some kind of cluster that could shelter people but also that could be open to the city. So the overall project is made out of 4 different buildings. One of them was the association. One of them was the public pavilion, which is open for the families in the night, for, let's say, for activities, but also for the city during the day. There is a part, let's say, there was some kind of give back to the city. So it's all a private intervention, so it's not funded by the public. Everything is private. It's a social facility. So let's say there was also some kind of give back to the city with some part of the park which was reopened. And then we have twin houses or twin apartments which could host, let's say, parents and sons, let's say, on the edge before and after, let's say, the time when the parents will not be there anymore. So it was a kind of intense process. This is in the end, some kind of, let's say, I would say it's a kind of little master plan in the city. So we wanted also to keep this kind of proximity idea of having, let's say, which is already there in the neighbor. So having this cluster with a kind of high sense of proximity in between the houses. So there is a private part which is more for the families, and the public part which is more for the people. I'm gonna go through it very quickly. So it's always somehow it's not easy to work, let's say, in this kind of condition, where somehow, besides the, let's say, the fact that the site itself was, let's say, was plenty of, how can I say, vincoli, or let's say, it was plenty of, let's say, constraints that forced us also on the urban side to, let's say, to make kind of delicate choices. This was what was there before. This was the construction site. And luckily, we don't have still the, let's say, all the pictures as, let's say, on the completed one. I'm going to skip this quickly. So it's not easy also to work with the topics of mental fragility, also because it has to do also, so it had to do with an intense participatory process with the people that was, we started the project with back in 2016. So with a high attention, let's say, even being social on the quality of materiality and on the quality of the architecture. So even more, because somehow this is a leftover, I mean, this place will be left when the parents will not be there anymore. So there is also a matter of how this building could be somehow a buffer for the sons which will live there in the future. This is the public pavilion, so with this idea of having something that in the day will host, let's say, public activities also from the municipality, but during the night will be somehow the dining and party places for the families. So this is open to a public passage. This is the interior. And then the fact that there are, let's say, we could say architectural devices like the use of zenithal light or the relation with the landscape, so with the existing landscape, with the new landscape we were creating, but also with, let's say, natural elements, which we thought they were very important also in the discussion we had with the people living in the place. So this is an image of the internal courtyard. This is one of the several, let's say, twin apartments. On the right is the parents, on the left is the kids. And the parents' apartment has some kind of extra room on the first floor, which is the caregiver room. So with the idea that, let's say, aging, this place could host both, let's say, elderly people, but in the future, new families which could live into it. So there are normal houses, I would say, even with a kind of specific condition. So it's living on the ground, which is very uncommon in Milano, with a garden. So let's say the effort we made was to keep it, let's say, somehow to try to provide or to give some kind of beautiness in the relation with the landscape, in the relation with the natural elements, even being social, and also, let's say, taking care of materiality. So in a way that the project could, let's say, could stay for a long time, let's say with his own quality. This is an image of one of the living rooms, so with the relation with the landscape on the outside and with the landscape on the sky. So we did this, let's say, these bottles of light on the rooftop, and the view on the, let's say, on the internal courtyard, so with the benches for the people. And every, let's say, even the, let's say, the service parts are always flooded by, I would say, natural light, which was one of the things we really thought together with, let's say, the passing of the time was important to provide to the people living in the place. This is a view, let's say, all these, let's say, building opens towards the north with big skylights somehow to take the light of the north, which is a very nice and indirect light. And then with also a lot of care to natural elements. So with the idea that somehow you could feel the time passing by in the place, and the time and the weather as well. So these are some pictures of the existing building, which was somehow heavily rebuilt. It was just, we wanted really to keep the traces of the place, even if the building itself didn't have such a quality. But we wanted to really to keep the quality of the place, inserting some kind of new tools to use the place. So again, this is the internal courtyard, and we hope, let's say, the trees will grow very quickly. And a night view where the building itself opens to the neighbors, let's say, as a kind of, we call it lanterna, so as a night lamp in the neighbor. So it becomes recognizable in the place and somehow even in the public space. So thanks a lot.